What happens when you lock a flamethrower like Bill Maher in a studio with the icy resolve of GOP strategist Scott Jennings? You get a live-wire political standoff that ignites the Constitution and sets fire to every sacred cow in the Beltway barn. In this unfiltered, no-holds-barred episode of Overtime, Maher hurls grenades at Mitch McConnell's so-called legacy, branding it a cynical hijack of American democracy, while Jennings shrugs with the smug calm of a man who knows his side won the game. It's Garland versus Barrett, fairness versus brute force, and every line is drawn in fire. Maher demands constitutional order. Jennings replies with cold political calculus. And just when you think it's about to simmer down, the discourse swerves into Trump versus Taylor Swift. And yes, you heard that right, bureaucratic exile to Iowa. But make no mistake, this is Maher's fury against Jennings's fireproof calm. Grab your popcorn, the house is burning.
Anyway, what do you believe will be Mitch McConnell's legacy? I guess that's who you'd be replacing, right?
Yeah.
When you run for Senate, if you run for Senate.
He's up in 26. Supreme Court, I mean, without question. I mean, he had a long career, 42 years, won 7 elections in Kentucky, but without question, I think his legacy is the court, specifically the Supreme Court. If he doesn't hold that seat open in the 2016 election, I'm not sure President Trump would have won, and then the cascade of appointments that followed will change the course of this country for generations.
Let's rewind the clock to the moment Mitch McConnell rewrote the rulebook and the future of America. It was a masterclass in power moves. Scott Jennings, GOP's loyal knight, treats McConnell like a tactical deity. Forget his speeches, Mitch's monument is the Supreme Court coup. Jennings waves the flag for the man who froze Merrick Garland in political amber and paved the freeway for Trump's judicial pit crew to roll through. But Maher? Maher doesn't just call foul, he detonates. He sees a double cross so flagrant it scorches the Constitution. No vote for Garland with 8 months left in Obama's term, yet Amy Coney Barrett gets sworn in while Trump was still brushing debate stage glitter off his suit. The hypocrisy Maher roars is industrial grade. This isn't just a spat over Senate rules. It's a fundamental reckoning with how one party weaponized the system while daring you to call it anything but legal.
And usually when a president is in office, he gets to choose who the Supreme Court nominee. He wanted Merrick Garland, and Mitch McConnell would not even give him a hearing. That was unprecedented. What is the latest bullshit argument why that's okay?
If the bullshit you're referring to is the advise and consent clause in the U.S. Constitution,
No.
that's the argument.
At the time, the argument was it's too close to an election. It was 2015.
Well, that wasn't the full argument. The full argument was we had divided government, and then the American people were going to make a decision, and they did, and they chose a Republican president.
Later.
Well, as I just said in the editorial, if it had been the other way around, you would have went apeshit about it. If somebody had tried, no, you'd have been cool with it.
Well, I lived through the Bush years when the Democrats in the Senate did everything they could possibly do to obstruct George W. Bush from putting judges on the court. So it's not the first time I lived through.
Not judges. This is Supreme Court. And did Bush get a pick on the Supreme Court?
Why does Scott Jennings keep singing Mitch McConnell's praises like he's a GOP Beethoven? Because in Jennings's world, McConnell didn't just win, he redefined winning. The Garland blockade wasn't obstruction. It was the Senate flexing its constitutional guns. Let the next president decide, McConnell said in 2016, slamming the door shut. But flash forward to 2020 and oops, they changed their minds. Amy Coney Barrett got greenlit in record time, just days before the election. Same party, same scenario, completely different play. To Jennings, that's not hypocrisy. It's strategy with a capital S. The Constitution, he argues, gives the Senate power to advise and consent, not a requirement to vote. McConnell just used the tools in his belt. But to Maher and millions more, it was a political bait and switch that flipped to democracy the bird.
They gave him a hearing, and then they voted on it. They could have voted him not. We've seen that. Nixon suggested 2 people who they didn't put on the court. You can do that. But you get to actually have a hearing. This was completely unprecedented and unconstitutional and illegal. And by the way, your hero, Mitch McConnell, when they asked him if he would do it again, he said, sure. You know, I mean, And then they did do it again in reverse. When Amy Coney Barrett was put on the court, it was the exact same thing. It was even closer to an election.
It was literally like 3 weeks, a month before the election.
Well, we didn't have divided government then. We had unified government.
That's what I'm saying. It's situational for you.
Right, exactly. It's just,
different situations.
Maher isn't buying the Constitution as weapon argument. He's raging at the sheer audacity of Republicans who wrap themselves in constitutional purity only to treat it like a choose-your-own-adventure book. You can't preach originalism on Tuesday and gut democratic norms by Thursday. He calls it not just unfair, but anti-democratic and corrosive. Garland was left in political limbo with months on the calendar. Then Barrett got a turbo boost confirmation weeks before Election Day. Maher isn't just mad, he's sounding the alarm. If rules only apply when they're convenient, the game's already rigged. This isn't about Barrett or Garland. It's about the Supreme Court being stripped of legitimacy, turned into a partisan pawn. And the worst part, it's working.
But why are you guys against the exercising of political power?
That's the exercise of political power is fine. This is unconstitutional. That's what we're against. We're against going outside the law. They wrote it down. It's very clear. Same thing as some of the things Trump is saying now about a third term. It's very clear. It's in the Constitution. Aren't you the guys who carry the little pocket Constitution in your thing?
Yeah.
Don't you have one under your pocket square there?
Yeah, and in it.
And it says 2 terms. It says a president gets to pick who is the guy they're going to put up for the Supreme Court.
And it says the Senate has to confirm them. And it says the Senate gets to advise and consent on this. And that's up to the Senate on how they do that. It's a co-equal branch of government.
So that is the latest bullshit argument. All right, that was my question.
At the core of this clash is a philosophical divide so deep, it might as well be tectonic. Scott Jennings sees political power like a war chest. Accumulate it, deploy it, dominate with it. If you've got the majority, you steamroll. No apologies, no regrets. Maher? Maher believes power should be restrained by ethics and the Constitution's moral spirit. He's not just mourning Garland, he's mourning the guardrails that used to keep democracy from becoming a contact sport. This isn't just cable banter, it's a microcosm of America's existential crisis. When political wins become more important than the rules that make winning meaningful, we're not a democracy. We're a demolition derby. Maher sees McConnell not as savvy, but as the architect of a slow, methodical collapse. Jennings sees him as a legend. That's the standoff.
Okay, Kash Patel says he's shutting down the FBI's D.C. headquarters and moving staff across the country. Should other government agencies be doing the same? That's an interesting proposition. I'm not against that from the get for any reason. I mean, everything probably is too concentrated in Washington. It's a little too incestuous, right?
I have a take on this about the media. I think news organizations should incorporate more bureaus outside of New York, LA, and Washington.
Oh, totally.
And Cincinnati and wherever, because the bias in media I'm sure you would agree, can be liberal, but it's like less political to me than it is cultural and class-based. And, I just hire more reporters in Des Moines, hire fewer reporters in DC.
It wouldn't bother me in the slightest if the Agriculture Department was in Iowa and the Department of Homeland Security was somewhere. I mean, Washington, there's a concentration of people there who only talk to each other. They live in this little bubble. And I think the longer you're in it, the less you have in common with regular Americans. You put some of those government workers out in the middle of the country, they might have a little bit better understanding of how people are feeling about how their government's operating.
Do you work out of Washington?
No, I live in Kentucky.
The argument loops back, again and again, to the toxic gravitational pull of hypocrisy, not just political, but constitutional. Maher takes a sledgehammer to the GOP's holy theatrics. He mocks their fetish for pocket constitutions, those sacred pamphlets they brandish at rallies like crucifixes, right before they incinerate every principle they stand for. It's all for show, Maher suggests, a red, white, and blue charade. Jennings counters with the same refrain, it's legal, but legal isn't the same as legitimate. Legality, Maher argues, has become a loophole, a justification, a get-out-of-jail-free card for partisan engineering. And while Maher admits both sides play dirty, he makes it clear, this time it's the GOP who took the hypocrisy prize home, polished it, and put it on a shelf next to their Amy Coney Barrett bobbleheads.
What did you make of Donald Trump's post this morning alleging that since I said I hate Taylor Swift, this guy. All the deals, but he still has time for this. You gotta love it. Since I said I hate, she's no longer hot. Or I don't think he means physically hot. I think he means hot in the business. I think she just finished the biggest tour.
Are you sure he doesn't mean physically hot?
I don't. I do not mean
I assume he's criticizing her looks. That was my first reaction.
No,
Oh, no longer.
I don't think he means that. I recall when he went to the Super Bowl earlier this year, he noted at the time that the crowd booed her and cheered him. I think at that point he started to detect that she was faltering with the public. And I will say this actually. Scott has a point here. I mean, first of all, she made over $1 billion. She's $1 billion on that tour.
Biggest tour ever.
Yeah, like biggest tour ever in history. When she endorsed Kamala Harris right before the election, and it was a very sort of, I think it was like an Instagram post or something. Her approval ratings, like people polled this stuff. Her approval ratings went up with Democrats, but with Republicans and independents, they actually went down strikingly. Like people don't like celebrities and politicians getting involved in elections.
They really don't. I think it actually hurts.
Yeah, I agree.
But that was after her tour, like in the middle. She's fine. She'll be fine. But I don't think she's not hot.
Right. She's not unpopular. She's not as hot in the industry now because she just finished a giant tour. So she needs time to, relax and be with that football player.
And just when you think things couldn't get more absurd, here comes Taylor Swift. Yes, really. When someone on the panel decided to say she's not hot anymore, it wasn't just a weird flex. It was a cultural drive-by in the middle of a constitutional crisis. Was it about her looks? Her status? Who knows? Who cares? She's fresh off the most profitable tour in human history and practically runs her own microeconomy. But the right has decided her political dabbling is treasonous. Swift endorsed Democrats, and suddenly she's public enemy number one in MAGA world. Trump can't help but fan the flames, dragging her into his cultural grievance blender, spinning it into his daily performance art. It's a circus within a circus. Maher and crew peel back the farce, celebrities preach politics, voters tune out, and the culture war eats itself alive on national television. If you came for reason, you're in the wrong room. But if you came for chaos, contradiction, and the slow implosion of American discourse, hit that subscribe button and buckle up. This ride's just getting started.